Tathagatas, Buddhas of the past, present, and future, your spiritual sons and disciples, who are the masters of a limitless ocean of attributes of perfection, who consider all humble feeling beings as your only sons, understand these true, sad words. Tibet is a nation in exile, a scattered people whose land is missing. Once each year, wherever they are, Tibetans gather to recall the terrible events of a day in March 1959 in the holy city of Lhasa, when many Tibetans were killed in an heroic attempt to free their land from the communist invaders. For 2,000 years, Tibet chose to live in isolation, deep within the Himalayas, the walled cities, the palaces and monasteries, the pure land of the Buddha. Desiring only to be left alone, the people of Tibet were totally unprepared for the violence that would wreck their peaceful world. In October 1950, Peking ordered its armies into Tibet, announcing a plan to liberate its neighbor and restore it as an inalienable part of Chinese territory. No match for the well-armed troops, the tiny Tibetan militia was quickly overrun. Tibet was now an occupied land. The Buddhist culture of Tibet was our last link to an ancient civilization, in which time had stopped, practiced by a people whose natural occupation was to pray. From Peking, the word was reassuring. The religious beliefs and customs of the Tibetan people shall be respected. The irreligious, the barbarian bands without pity, who have done many evil things, oppress especially those born in Tibet, in our beloved land of snows. Let the immense power of mercy arise and stop the flow of blood and tears. When Tibet was free, Thubten Pala was senior chamberlain to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama.
When our country was invaded, the Dalai Lama was hardly more than a boy. For 9 years, as he came of age as the leader of our people, we struggled to coexist with the Chinese, to prevent bloodshed and keep a little independence. As senior chamberlain, I accompanied His Holiness on his visit to Peking, where we were given solemn promises by Chairman Mao himself that Tibet would have full autonomy. As these promises were being made in Peking, they were being broken in Lhasa. It soon became clear why the Chinese were so industrious in their extensive road building. These roads led from the heart of China to the borders of Tibet, threatening our ancient neighbors. And with the many Chinese who were coming to resettle in Tibet, we were destined to become a minority people in our own country.
For 25 years, Abbot Ugyen Tseten studied and taught at Sera Monastery, near the capital city of Lhasa.
I recall, as though it happened yesterday, the great processional of His Holiness that came to Sera on his religious pilgrimage. It was one of his last public gestures. It was only a short time after this great event when the Chinese again made threatening gestures toward the Dalai Lama, and many Tibetans who feared for his safety surrounded the palace to protect him. After much urging by his advisors, and in the hope of avoiding bloodshed, His Holiness stole away from his quarters at night in disguise. Many Tibetans followed him into exile. I was one of those who fled our country on that bitter journey.
Many thousands followed the Dalai Lama to seek refuge in India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Sikkim. Farmers, yak herders, shepherds, monks, and government workers. And for each refugee, there is a personal nightmare that recurs like a wound that will not heal with time.
There were 16 of us when we left Kong Po, where we lived and tended our animals. It took us many weeks to reach the southern region near India, and it was getting worse each day, with food running out and Chinese soldiers grabbing those of us who straggled behind. In Lobrak, where I come from, we were mostly simple farmers. But after the Chinese came, many of my relatives and neighbors were put in prison or killed for refusing to give up their land. So I became desperate to escape with my family. We had a very difficult journey to Bhutan. For 10 days we were without food, and every day we thought was the last.
The Chinese took all our properties and animals. We had nothing to live on. It was terrible in the mountain passes, frozen by the winds. And when the sun was on the snow, we had to cover our eyes with our hair not to go blind. It became hopeless, just stumbling on. We didn't care if there were soldiers or a cliff ahead. We felt like walking over it to our deaths.
To humble beings immersed in suffering, all harried by terrible and endless bad karma, unbearable diseases, fighting starvation and all dangers. To these bring peace. Let an ocean of bliss and happiness arise.
That's the kind of dance we used to do in eastern Tibet, where we come from. We used to dance as soon as we learned to walk.
Thupten Rakra was a nobleman and scholar in Tibet. Now he is a guardian of a group of orphans whose cultural needs are his main concern.
My love of learning has made my present life more bearable, and I feel I can give more to these children as a result. For the ways of Tibet are in my mind, always. I can only try to pass this knowledge on to the young, so they may never forget who they are and the great land they come from. Even those born in exile must feel it. We don't teach them to hate the intruders. We must accept for now what has happened. I may never again see Tibet, not in this life, but perhaps they will.
Once, every Tibetan family considered it an honor to send a son to the monastery to devote his life to monastic studies. There was no higher achievement.
Tell us, is it time that devours its own children, or ignorance? Answer. Answer.
In occupied Tibet, all that is gone. Though young Tibetans, scattered throughout the world in exile, have never known a free Tibet, the memory has been passed on to them, and they feel the burden of its loss.
What's the use of all the praying? It can't bring back our country, can it? It's sad for our Lama gurus. They're good people. But what chance do they have against the violence and hate?
In occupied Tibet, Buddhism is in disgrace. Of the many thousands of monks in the once great monasteries, not a one remains. Only those few scattered in exile are the caretakers of a vanishing tradition. We did not mean harm to anyone. Even those who have taken our land have only harmed themselves. They have diminished their own karma. And all of us must suffer for them, too. Gone is the pure land of the Buddha, the land of snows. Yet it persists in the faith of a man from a missing land, who profoundly believes that Tibet is near, Tibet is real.